I've been having a lot of fun with Nightreign the past few days since the new patch. One of the new relics you can buy in the new shop is insanely good, and for me pretty much a must-have on every character now, as it really works with the way that I tend to route runs. I've mainly been doing runs with my beloved strong Bonkman, but as the Parry nerd, it didn't feel right for my first video on Nightreign to be on any other class than the Executor. So here's a run with the Deflect class, where I'll talk a little bit about how to play this character and how I route Nightreign runs in general. This was a run where a lot of things didn't go my way, but it still turned out deathless with a pretty decent rune count at the end of day 2. So we're dropping into a pretty standard spawn location and heading straight for the baby camp to clear it out for level 2. Relics for Executor. Unless you get very lucky, it's really hard to beat this combo of Miasma and Wise, as they allow you to start out with Bleed, Poison and Frost, as well as invisibility and increased damage on basically everything you find. I use the same combo for Duchess, and both classes absolutely shred with it. The third relic though is the new edition, available to purchase after beating Stronkjaw. This relic gives you a 10% permanent attack boost for every Evergaol you clear, and gives you a Stone Sword key at the start. So after the baby camp, I always head to the nearest fort or great church for a Stone Sword key. You'll notice that I'm fighting a few extra enemies here, which I would generally recommend for any of the squishier classes. If you're playing Wilder or Raider, you can Leroy the Evergaols at level 2, but some extra levels is good for the other classes, I think. You can see on the boss just how powerful this relic combo is at melting health bars. Try to level up at your pin, then level up at the grace. So my general philosophy for day 1 in Nightreign is baby camp, Stone Sword key from a fort or great church, 1 Evergaol, then clear out the castle in the centre. But with this new relic boosting your damage per Evergaol, I now try to do 2 before heading to the castle. Executor can be really nice for the early Evergaols, as beast mode is brilliant for dealing with some of the more annoying bosses you can get. It's a lot slower than using your status katana, but a lot safer. Try to unlock the Evergaol you just beat, then level up at the grace. So I jumped into the mine here for a smithing stone 2. If you have this relic set up, it's always worth upgrading your weapon on Executor. I get Rivers of Blood later on in this run, but even Rivers or Moonveil aren't quite as good as having all the buffs we have with the starting sword. So it's always worth upgrading if you can. Pick up the smithing stone 2, replacing your Stone Sword key with it. Then realise that you fucking need that Stone Sword key and go back and get it. Now at this point, Miyazaki decided to be awful and start closing the circle around the castle in the centre. So instead of going for that second Evergaol, I started heading towards the castle. There was a flame chariot camp on the way, so after trying my best to go for the skill points and failing, I don't know if you can actually do this, I got absolutely memed by everyone's favourite boss. I am fucking convinced these guys have a secret mechanic where if you don't get the plunge on your first try, your chances of ever getting it again drop to 10%. So let's talk about the Executor. Is it everything that I wanted it to be? No, not really. It actually kind of sucks. The trouble is that compared to the starting weapon, or almost anything that you're likely to pick up on this class, the Cursed Sword just does so little damage. My solution to this on this class is always just to rush max level, then have some fun deflecting stuff on day 2 when time doesn't matter. But it doesn't really feel like a complete class. Very early on after release, I did a trio run that went hilariously wrong, with the group being really underleveled at the end of day 2. I was playing Executor and used the Cursed Sword to keep the Crucible Knight boss occupied for what felt like 10 minutes, while my teammates killed the Hippo. Apart from that, I genuinely can't think of another time where the deflecting stance felt really useful in a run. Don't worry though, there is going to be plenty of deflecting later on. So this seed had the circle covering the majority of the castle, with only 4 Crucible Knights accessible. Crucible Knights are the only variant on the castle that don't require any strategy. They're all very isolated, so just fight them one by one, nipping out to level up whenever you need to replenish your heals. So as I killed my final Crucible Knight, the circle started to close up. With a poison camp and a church available, I started to head east. Now poison camps. Do not ever worry about the boss. He is not the danger. The true boss here is the hilariously overtuned crossbow guy. And if you think I'm joking, here's what he can do to a max level raider with a ton of damage negation. So yeah, always kill him first, then worry about the perfumer. One of my favourite things about Executor is that the ult is so good for dealing with the pre-boss mobs. If you know which boss is coming, and you know you don't need the beast form for it, you can use it early on to deal with the gank squad. And now it's deflecting time. You can deflect every single attack of a bell-bearing hunter with the exception of one. So on day 2, on a seed with no shifting earth, I always like to work my way around some bosses before heading to the castle bosses. On this run, because of the castle being out of the circle, I also had more stuff to do there. And I still had a stone sword key. So after beating up the tree avatar right next to the day 1 fight, I started heading north for my standard route. This central area north of the castle is where I try to end up in the middle of day 2, as you always have 2 bosses, 2 Evergaols, all very close together, and it's super easy to run down to the castle. Unusually, neither of the 2 centre bosses were formidable great bosses, so after a quick delete of a demi-human queen, and then a Miranda flower, I headed to my second Evergaol for another permanent buff. And just as the circle started to close in, I was approaching the castle and grabbing my penultimate level. Since most of the castle was inaccessible to me on day 1, I could clean up a couple more Crucible nights to hit max level with plenty of time to spare. Now, the general advice I'd give for castle bosses is to do the basement one first. The run back is much shorter if anything goes wrong, and you do not want to get trapped in there if you're doing it later in the day. But as I knew I had plenty of time, I went for the top one first. The standout passive on this run was what I got from this fight. The inflict blood loss at low HP buff is a must get on pretty much every character, but especially so for Executor, as it's one of the only ways you can apply a status effect while staying in parry mode. I do think it also is bugged because I've had it just randomly activate on quite a few runs now, which is a nice bonus. After the fight, I dropped down to buy a Wending Grace for safety, then down to the basement. I was kinda gutted I didn't get the Bell-Bearing Hunter here, as I would have actually had enough time for a parry fight. And on the way out, it was finally time for some Crucible deflects. In parry mode, you want to play far more passively for Crucibles than you do for bell bearings. The nice thing here is the staggers will trigger pretty quickly because of how aggressive these guys are. I wimped out halfway through and took the fight up to the talisman room so I didn't get trapped. And why is it in this game that when you're on a run that could really do with a little help, that you will always get some obscure talisman from the base game that adjusts some resistance that you've never been killed by? But when you're on a run like this, where you're basically unkillable and don't need anything, you always literally get the best talisman in the game for your build. Now, in the final moments of day 2, a brilliant example of what I hate most about myself as a Nightreign player. You can see me looking at the map, looking at that church to the south thinking, yeah, another hill would be nice. It wouldn't be too risky to go grab it. But nah, let's play it safe. This is a good run. I keep running. The church is in the Nightreign now. It's definitely too late. It's not worth the risk. And then just when the risk is high enough that it could potentially nuke the run, I go, oh, I might fight this, but nah, fuck it, I am going to go grab that heal. The final boss was Tree Trio, and genuinely ulting here was pure raider muscle memory, and actually made life harder than it needed to be, as it's far easier to kill the Lanedale Knights when they're on the horse instead of blocking. When they were finally down, I played around with the Sentinel for a bit until my heals ran low. So a day 3 start at max level with 320k to spend on goodies. Wending Grace for safety, then I bought a couple of physics to forget to use. I actually really like the Gladius fight. If you've watched this channel for a while, you'll know that I'm not the biggest fan of magic spammers and AoEs, which is a particularly difficult spot to be in Nightreign. But I really like the melee approach to Gladius, and even the triple split phase isn't as bad as you think at first. So that's it, some general tips on Executor runs. I hope you've enjoyed this little run through Nightreign, and if you'd like to see more, let me know in the comments, as I have a ton of runs filmed. As always, thanks for watching. See you soon.